Hello, everyone. This is the editor group, product design UX research weekly sync for April 14th, 2021. And I mixed up the agenda. I wanted to start with design today. Michael, you can take it away.
Yep. So thanks for that. So like I said, this week's been a little bit interesting, a little bit frazzled. I think part of that is just like finding ways that, you can improve upon how you work personally. So for me, it's like, oh, I should have done better. So one of those things is when I saw the issue that Paul had to create the icon, and I'm like, oh, that's my bad on that. So I am thinking this is another case of why we should start using these product development workflow labels in our group better. And I think it will help in the near future once we start consolidating on an area where everyone's kind of focused on, not like people in settings and nav, people in editor, people doing random stuff. So I think once we have a better alignment, I think this kind of stuff will be spotted out quicker. But I think in the near term, starting using the workflow labels better. So if there's some stuff that has the workflow design on it, but it's already in planning or scheduled for a milestone, and it's like someone's already coding on it, that's probably not the right label. And trying to be more proactive on that so that we can use that to help with transparency as well. So we don't have this issue where people are trying to find the latest designs or latest direction on certain things. At least we make a decision and move on. So that's my kind of recommendation. And maybe my point of feedback for you, Eric, is like, what's the best way to start incorporating this into our existing work? Or is it like when you're planning the 1312, it's like, if they had the wrong labels, it's just like, and ping me, it's just like, please update, or whatever in the near term.
Yeah. So I think that, yes, this is an area that our group can and should do better about process. And I think we'd relatively, we've gotten by without it because we've had a relatively large amount of well understood work that didn't require a ton of UI design. And so we haven't had as many scenarios where this handoff needed to occur, or the dependency on final design wasn't as firm. Regardless, if we have something, we do have a workflow board, and if we have something scheduled for a milestone that is still in workflow design, that should be a red flag. Everything should be in development or ready for development or whatever that one is. And I think probably the process improvement is as simple as just working from that board and checking it, maybe even during the kickoff meeting or something like that, which we're going to have tomorrow. So we can take a look, and then that would be a prompt for engineers to say like, okay, well, this had design, but it hadn't moved out. Is it because it just like needs the workflow label updated, or did you not get to it yet? Is there any work that can be done before the design is ready, or are we waiting on your input or whatever? I don't know. I have concerns about putting too many guard rails on that process and falling into like a waterfall mentality where they won't, we can't touch anything until it's gone from this bucket to that bucket, and you're the only one that's allowed to change the label, et cetera, et cetera. So if we go too hard on this, I feel like we fall into that trap. I'm not saying we are the types of people that will. We're all very collaborative, but I think that would be what I would want to watch out for.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, because like I do like the flexible nature of our group, the way we're working right now. I think using it as a signal is like, like what's left on design. Maybe it might be like one little thing that I'm like stressing over, but like is in the grand scheme of things that can like be pulled out, or like, okay, that makes sense to look at that, or so I think it might serve as a good prompt for discussions on where things are at. And I think I suggested this earlier, like a few weeks ago, because I feel like sometimes I get stuck on little things and I realize that like, oh, this thing could be split up a lot easier, or like there could be opportunities to approach the problem, like either building the framework and foundation to support it, or working on some other aspect, or finding a simpler solution to something. So yeah, I want to use it less gatekeeping, like you said, but probably more conversation starter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah. Let's try and put that in place. I'll bring it up during the kickoff meeting tomorrow. We'll look at the workflow board, update it if it needs to be. I'll make a note.
Okay. The other thing, the other point I have on here is next week's UX showcase will be time shifted to accommodate more of the Asia Pac region, and with some overlap with Europe. So with that, because I'm in Australia, I will do my UX showcase, and that will be around the navigation work. The exact topic and theme or angle of it will probably is still to be determined. I'm working on it this week, which means today, because I want to get some feedback from people before next Thursday. So yeah, I'll be looking at that. Probably be really heavily influenced by some of the videos that Marcel did recently, and then your document, Eric, about where we're at and our future opportunities. So I think I'm gonna remix some of those things and mixing it up with a topic that Catherine and I kind of talked about a lot, about like, where do you start with this thing and why do we start on certain things? Because inheriting hundreds of issues and trying to find a path. I think the way we did it with doing research and kind of design work in parallel and trying to find out what was going on, there's some kind of story there. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on.
That sounds great. I have the utmost confidence that you'll come up with a great presentation. If you want feedback on it, I'm happy to give it, but don't feel like you need to run it by me. If you need just to bounce ideas or dry run or anything, let me know.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And then the last point in the design section is this one of these things where I deliberate over, and whether it's worth deliberating so much over is like, I need some feedback. Whether we name the first menu item project information, where it's currently project overview right now. There's good cases for it. Like I think we could go ahead with it. It's a great idea. It's a positive change. Like the thing holding me back is like, I'm not 100% sure if we'll stick with it. Like, I don't know if we'll keep it for 1 or 2 milestones and then change it because we change the interaction pattern, or people get confused that there's no overview. Like the word overview is that distracting to be missing. So the concern I have is like, there's a lot of documentation to be changed and unit tests to be changed, and it's just like, and we talked about this in the past, Eric, that like we could leave it, but then this is also like a right time to make the change if the people are already in those areas. Yeah, like part of me is like, what am I looking for? Is like, I just need someone else's signal, like within the group, because I think from the design side, from my side, yeah, it's a fair move. Whether we reverse it, that's like my kind of like concern. Like is it safe to delay? Yeah, like that's yeah, I'm kind of back and forth on this one.
Yeah. So I've been following the issue before. My gut and what I've done in the past, personal decisions like this, is just decide, and then if you feel disappointed, then you should do the other one, right? Like just say like, I'm going to try this one on for size and then see how you feel. But I think since Amy's on the call, like maybe you could weigh in on not only the impacts to docs and like the work that it would take, the actual real work that this implies, but like the semantics and which one is more appropriate.
I want to give you an orthogonal answer to what you're asking for here. Michael, do right by our users. Our job is to clean up on the technical writing team. Do what you need to do. Okay.
Okay.
The rest is my problem.
I think
it's a good stance. Go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, maybe Michael, you could walk us back to why project information would be better than project overview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, I think that so the change that we're proposing is changing the label project overview to project information, because the initial page that a user will land to now in our new proposal is actually the project name itself. So that will be the main landing page of the project. So if they have repositories enabled, it will be like the variation that has like the repository information there. If repository is turned off, it's actually like an issue list that appears as the details page. And because of that, the current menu item with the home icon and the label project overview is no longer really fitting, because it's not really an overview. If the stuff that will be in there now is no longer like an overall details kind of view, it's more just like like activities, releases, if in the future labels or members goes in there. This kind of area of like general, like these are pieces of the that make up the project, but they're not really an overview, because neither of those things give you a good overview of what's going on in the project. So that is the concern with keeping the name project overview. Some other suggestions in the past, and plus the home icon. So it's no longer the home, because the home will be the project name. So the other change that we're doing is changing the home icon in the project world to be the project icon, and in the groups world, it'll be the group icon. That's cool. Now, when you look at the name project overview, some other considerations was like more, but that's too random and kind of nondescript, and it feels like that would be like going against our top navigation, where we're saying more is nondescript and useless as a menu label to help people find what they need. So we debated back and forth in the discussion and landed on the name information, which activities, releases, labels. Yeah, I think they fall in the definition of information. Like, this is extra information about the project. And at the time, like at the moment right now, I think that's the best name we have. And I think that name is better than project overview. So in the spirit of what's best right now, based on the current information, I like project information. The concern I have is that some explorations of the designs and stuff and that we're thinking about has the project overview as just project, like just the name project itself. And I'm like, I don't know how that's going to turn out. There's other ideas of, grouping the labels together, and maybe there's a pattern that like all this information lives under project overview, but yeah, like this is kind of like a big unknown, right? Like, and this is where I think maybe in investigating the grouping or the labeling of the menu items, we might find a better name. So the question is like, do you delay this decision now in hopes of something uncertain, or do you go with something that you're confident right now, with the possibility of backtracking in the future. And I think my biggest concern with documentation was the screenshot stuff. But I think, Amy, if we treat that screenshot stuff as like a separate kind of initiative, as in like moving forward, this is why we want to not include navigation and stuff like that, then we can make these iteration changes without being too concerned. Because I think you estimated the screenshot part as an 8, whereas like the changing of the text itself is a less, I think it was a 3, so it was less daunting. So maybe like I'm conflating both of those two issues into like one big one versus like, so it's like a 11 point. Yes, Amy, go.
We're already on it.
Okay, cool.
The issue that I linked in here, and I'll drop it into the agenda. We are already starting to clean up and crop screenshots in there. Yeah. Because you all gave us a heads up on this, we got started.
Okay.
So do it. I'm just going to keep saying this. Do what you need to do, okay?
Okay. So like in the spirit of that, today I feel very strongly with moving ahead with project information, and then I'll create a separate issue to say change project overview instances in the docs and everywhere to say project information.
Yeah.
And then, whether Amy does that or we break it up, I think that's a separate kind of discussion. But
I would say for now, go ahead and create a doc specific issue. That way it can be assigned to me and assigned to a milestone, because I'm trying to get everybody in Create used to the idea that Amy parcels her work out into milestones like engineers do, so that I can point to it and say, this has me busy right now, or hey, this is done, or hey, I need help, but it all filters back into this issue. So give me a solid place to start from in an issue, and we'll go from there.
And I was going to follow up with a question of, when would this change land? Like, what milestone would this change happen?
You're going to say 14.0, aren't you?
Is it 14?
I'm like looking back and forth.
Yeah, it's got to be 14, right?
Because if it's 14.0, it seems like there's still time in between to solidify it. So plan for it. But because there are still some open proposals, that's what would make me hesitant to say, we're going to change this tomorrow. But if there's still some runway to maybe sort out those different proposals, then
I don't think we have time to sort out the different proposals. I think the different proposals will like inform a future direction. And that's my kind of uncertainty, like whether we roll back or like change. I don't think it's a rollback. It's more like a change of decision. Like this feels like the best decision right now. Whether we change it, because it's an interesting one, because essentially we're removing home, or like this illusion of home, which is another kind of, part of me is like not, I'm sitting on like halfway, because it makes sense in one sense, but I would say, we go for it.
I think you've made your decision.
Yeah.
Eric, I was gonna take a stance and just say, leave it, see what happens, because who knows what's going to end up in there. They're both kind of ambiguous, but I had no stake in that decision. So I think you have successfully had plenty of points, and you've summarized it very well, that you feel confident about this change now. That's all we can hope for right now. Like, it's okay to overthink things, and it's okay to not feel 100%, but you shouldn't not act on it in anticipation of having to revisit something later. We'll just change it again later. I mean, it'll be work, but it'll be fine. Okay. It's not the first thing that we will have changed twice in a year, right? Like that's not, that shouldn't be a blocker to making a decision that's got clear benefits right now.
Yes.
Okay.
put instructions for you in the agenda. Let's start with essentially a research spike for me to find out what's this going to entail. That way, if it turns out that I have a problem, I know about it in 1312 and can get the work distributed to my team in 14.0.
All right, that's good. Thank you. So next point is UX research land. So with the multiple navigation interaction patterns that exist out there that popped up in the last 3 weeks. So this is like mainly around putting analytics and settings into the navigation somehow, whether it's on the left, the top, in tabs, all of these things, potentially even a third pattern of like with the collapsed menu items. And the secondary subnav is actually presented like a primary navigation. These kind of three solution validation, putting together a plan, which is looking at it more like from an epic level of looking at these three navigation patterns and comparing all three of them together. What I'm planning to use here is the same kind of scenarios that Catherine used for setting the baseline in the TreeJax studies, and then extending that to like, here's the UI of those menu patterns and seeing the task success, roughly the time. It's hard to judge time, like, but that's something we're just going to take a look to see. But hopefully through this, we'll compare and contrast and use that to inform future navigation direction for for the group responsible for that in the future. Because there's potentially 3 different solution validations to be done, I may be enlisting some other designers who are keen on navigation work to help out, but that's to be determined after I get the planning stuff done. So I was planning to finish that this week. So Catherine used this week to like catch up on life and like to-dos and everything. But yeah, probably next week I'll ping you again to just maybe set aside some time to discuss the design and the solution validation research, because there is CEO interest on one of the patterns.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. And then in the spirit of sharing research insights better, I'm hosting a session later today, which I call the debrief. It'll be your morning, Eric. So the idea here is just for me to go through the insights and observations of the solution validations that were done recently. And then the idea here is to help refine my writing and reporting back once we like make it more public that here's the findings, but also giving the team to ask any questions in real time about what went on in the solution validation. Maybe it's not thorough enough, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, whatever that may be. So that's the goal of this session. So that's going to be run later today for me, but it will be US morning, US East Coast morning. The meeting is in the shared calendar for the editor group, so feel free to jump in, but it also will be recorded for the group to watch. Because of the raw nature of it, I am not comfortable with making it public by default, but unlisted for sure, so that we can view it. So that's FYI in what I'm planning to do to wrap up this week.
I like this format. Thanks for setting it up. I think also, yeah, if you're presenting findings and maybe think you might fall into a trap of mentioning a customer name or something like that, probably best to plan on making it private. I wouldn't go unlisted because you could still find it. Just go ahead and make it private when you upload it, or just put it on a Google Drive and we can just decide which ones are worth uploading later.
Yeah.
One request would be for async discussions, like maybe the artifact could be an issue somewhere, and it could be in a design team project or something, not on gitlab.com if you don't want other people to see it, or you can make it, I guess if you make it private, anybody on gitlab.com could see it. So yeah, make it on like GitLab org, or we can make it in product, or I'm sure there's a design project you could put it in. And or I guess editor group would probably be the best one. So of course, put it in the editor group, create an issue so we can discuss afterwards async, and leave it out of Slack, because I think those will be some really valuable discussions. And I'm just assuming that I'm going to make it, I have an overlapping meeting toward the end. So if I could come in afterwards and like jot down my thoughts in an issue where I don't feel like then I'm dominating the conversation by spitballing with you and stuff like that, that would be helpful.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll create like an agenda-like thing in our editor group world. So that sounds good to start.
Cool. Thanks everyone for all those updates. I didn't have anything really important to discuss from the product side. I was trying to take a break of just talking about settings and navigation from a product standpoint. I mean, we're going to record, I'm going to record the kickoff tomorrow. 13.12 is largely going to be continuing work on 13.11. We're moving towards 14.0. We have our 3 priorities. Nothing's really changing there. So to outline them again, the 3 priorities are the content editor MVC in Wiki, the consolidated top navigation, and the updated left navigation. We're making progress in all 3, and really no change to product strategy there or any kind of product insights. But I did see this this Slack message come across, I think on our competitive analysis channel. I can't remember what channel it was in, but I thought it was really interesting. I put it in the agenda, and it is a comparison of a bunch of different hosting options for Jamstack sites specifically. So this would include GitHub, Netlify, Cloudflare, Firebase. Anyway, it was a nice little matrix. It's not the easiest thing to read. It's not the easiest on the eyes as far as the presentation goes, if I'm honest. But it's packed with some good data. I'm actually impressed how GitLab pages stand up, and I can say that because we don't own the feature, but like I didn't realize some of these things that are just like global GitLab tiering decisions or limits, application limits, work out in our favor for GitLab pages and hosting on there. I think we stack up pretty nicely. So it's just interesting food for thought. I was poring over this as I was settling in yesterday, I think, and figured I'd share in case you missed it.
Cool, thanks for sharing that.
So yeah, I mean, it's, pages is not our category, but we work a lot in the mindset of somebody who's making a Jamstack site. So it's good to keep an eye on what pages can do and what other competitors are doing in that space. I do like that it didn't come right out and say like, this is the best one. This is more of just like data and comparison. You can draw your own conclusions based on your own priorities. I did not know that we had a 3-hour runner timeout, which seems dramatically higher than most of the competition. Like Netlify's is 15 minutes, for example. So if your job can't run in 15 minutes, it's not going to run. That's my understanding anyway. I'd like to dig deeper with the with the Pages team to understand benefits and drawbacks to that. Anyway, just something different on my mind. Still thinking about Jamstack stuff, so you can't take the static site editor too far out of my mind. I think that covers anything that I needed to bring up sync discussion wise. So we can call it a meeting unless anybody else has anything to add.
Nothing to add.
All good over here.
Cool. Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and look forward to seeing you again next week. And for those, if you're going to make it to the kickoff or any of the other various sync meetings, I have a lot of sync meetings tomorrow. I'll probably likely see at least one of you in one of those. So take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.